I appreciate you all taking the time to join us. We are doing these, we originally called them lunch and learns, but we learned quickly that nobody was going to come at 12 to 1. So we moved them later in the day so we could get a good turnout. But we are trying to do these at least every other month, where we're bringing in community groups to really talk and educate us, so we can begin to break down some of the silos of support throughout our district, because ultimately we are all serving and supporting the same people in different ways. So this month I am very, very grateful to have Monica Smith Callahan with us, and Jocelyn Dale. And they're going to be talking about the state of kind of poverty within our district. That's our focus for this month. And we are also going to be sending out a newsletter. If anybody does not get our newsletter, please put your email in our chat and we'll send it to you. We do a newsletter every month. It is chock full of information. And we would love to share that information out of our department. So please put your email in the chat and we will add you to our list. So as not to take up any more of your time and to get us out of here in a power hour, which is what my promise is, I'm going to turn it over to Monica Smith Callahan to begin.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Mann, thank you for inviting me to be a part of the discussion. So as Dr. Mann said, my name is Monica Smith Callahan. I serve as Deputy County Manager for Community Affairs for the county side. And as Monica said, you know, we all play a role and have a stake in the poverty and the state of our various communities throughout the county. I am still fairly new to the role. I was brought in or appointed to this position February 19th of last year, literally before the bottom fell out with the COVID response. But it has been a great year. I will say a great year. From my purview and my seat, when you're thinking about community engagement and community outreach, this county manager, Mr. John Vitoicus, he revamped this role, particularly to have an outward focus and a focus on our community. As you guys know, in schools, as well as we do, with 102 plus languages being spoken in your school division, that those students represent families, and those families are a part of communities. And as the diversity of our county continues to grow, which is a great thing, this county manager knew that there needed to be a more intentional focus on how do we serve those communities and their unique needs, hence my role. And then we also have Raina Van, which I'm sure you guys will meet, if not already, on another call, but Dr. Mann's office has been working with Raina as well with the immigrant and refugee community. Raina, as our outreach coordinator for the county, is very much focused her role on those in the multicultural and immigrant and refugee communities throughout the county. So she and I working together collaboratively with all of our agencies, Jocelyn in DSS, mental health, our CRWP, which is our Capital Region Workforce Partnership. You'll hear me refer to them as well in my brief comments this evening, but as well as community revitalization, that is all about housing and stable housing for our residents here in the county. So I stick by with 2020 being a difficult year, but being a great year, because it did allow for us, with this new role, new positions, Raina and I both, to do more collaborative work. And my role is intentional as well as being liaison to schools. So Dr. Tigan and I work very closely together as well. So this was very strategic on the part of the county manager to ensure that that the needs of our county through schools, through our various human services agencies, that there was a person intentionally sitting in a seat every day and thinking about how do we do that better. and hence my role. So just tonight, I just wanted to briefly, in honor of the topic of the discussion this evening, not take away anything from Jocelyn, because she will be able to talk more specifically about how we are addressing poverty through our DSS and our services that come out of that department. I just more or less wanted to create an overview for you guys as to some of the initiatives that we are doing very intentionally on the ground. And you'll hear me keep saying the word strategic, intentional, methodical, because that's how we have been doing everything through the COVID response, but even beyond, and how we're thinking beyond the COVID response. Because as you all know, as providers, literally you each as teachers, whatever role you play in our schools, you all prevention specialists, you are all having an eye and a heart for our young people and educating our young people who will eventually be our future workforce and our future community leaders, and preparing them for what's next. And we know that poverty can literally affect the way a child learns, the way the child interacts with other children, and even with you guys as being teachers and administrators throughout our school system. So those social determinants of health, and that's the way I think about this COVID response, and how we quickly saw in the data that there was a disproportionality in how this virus was impacting communities of color and those that are impoverished, their lack of information. So just briefly touching on how our response from the county level, we use data, literally census data, and we pull data down to the street level in many of our communities to be able to determine how we were going to get information out to our communities. And pulling that poverty data, we have about 35,000 identified homes in the county as being low to moderate, so below the poverty level. And then when you couple that with our demographic data, and then using that data to overlay the data that speaks to who doesn't have access to a vehicle, or the broadband data that we have, and where there's not access to broadband, we were able to literally to the street corner decide where we were going to do our outreach efforts, everything from canvassing, community canvassing, using volunteers, taking out our care kits. For those of you who don't know, we created Henrico County Care Kit, which includes 3 reusable face coverings, a bottle of hand sanitizer, and all throughout the spring, summer, and fall, we interchangeably put in literature that was valid and relevant for the time. So beyond wear a mask, stay 6 feet apart, and stay home, in our original messaging, we also included census information and reminding our communities to take the census. Raina's office was able to translate those documents into 11 different languages. Also working with our community policing, being able to get posters out into our bodegas and our corner stores and those small business owners in our multicultural communities, laundromats, to be able to help get that information into communities where our data showed us that there was a lack of access and a lack of information. So we are still in that the mindset of grassroots and getting information and meeting people where they are, and using community organizations such as our faith groups to help outreach into these communities. But beyond that, we have access to our mental health folks. In mental health, we have prevention services, and our folks who do our Connect programs in Coventry Gardens, Henrico Arms, Darbytown, Oakland Village and Ridgefield apartment complexes, those are trusted partners through our mental health that are literally in those communities on the ground every day doing feeding of those students. They provide summer programming, obviously when we're not in a COVID situation. So these are trusted partners of the management of these complexes, as well as to the residents of those complexes, and working with our Connect programs, which Marcy and Dr. Mans and their team have been doing for the past several months as well. We have been able to reach more people and to get more information, not just about COVID, but now we are talking about, other social determinants of health, and how do we help work within those communities and bring services into those communities beyond the mental health prevention services. So starting hopefully in the next few weeks, we have a meeting tomorrow to talk about CRWP, as I mentioned, our Capital Region Workforce Partnership. So working with those folks, how do we then bring those workforce services into these communities where there is already folks from the county on the ground, folks from schools? All of us have built these relationships. So now how do we capitalize on those relationships and continue to bring more services into those communities that will hopefully help to obviously, if we get some job training, job skill, and services around jobs and workforce into those communities, that we will then help to start to uplift and bring about a change within those communities and the various residents that are still trending under at or below our poverty level in the county. St. Luke's is another example of our on the ground and some of the initiatives that we are bringing into a community. We're partnering with the Virginia Department of Health. We've been approved to do a build out construction, if you will, of an existing space at St. Luke's that will be built out as a shared space between the Virginia Department of Health, our Richmond Henrico Health District, as well as some of our other services. Jocelyn and the DSS team will spend time there. The CRWP will spend time there bringing workforce supports as well as mental health supports. And even our aging. We have Sarah Morris, we have someone on our staff in human resources that is solely committed to thinking about our aging population. And so she will also bring some of her programming to that palette in St. Luke's. So as we get into that build out should be done in June, July timeframe, as we are able to have some real data, some quantitative data from that effort at St. Luke's. The hope is to be able to move that into some of our other subsidized housing communities where there will be an organized, coordinated effort amongst our services on the county side to be able to help elevate within those communities and bringing some of those resources directly into the communities through the trusted partnerships that we've been fostering over the last few months, and I can even say years. I just haven't been here as a part of this team. But when addressing the poverty, looking at it holistically and not just one aspect of it, because as we know, and you guys probably know better than I, that it is a holistic issue that we are facing, and it is not one demographic group that is experiencing or contributing to the poverty in the county. It is widespread. And we all know as well that we haven't even begun to feel the effects of this pandemic economically, health-wise, trauma-wise. Our students with a year, literally a year and a half of a learning gap with those students, and even more coming out now with that much of a learning gap with our high school students and those that have decided that they're just dropping out and they're not going to attempt the virtual learning, what those additional poverty numbers are going to look like in our county. So how do we work together, not just county, not just schools, but how do we partner and work together to address some of what is currently already here and has been an ongoing issue, but also thinking ahead and thinking about what or the additional poverty that we may be looking at as a result of this pandemic, and the dropout rate, and just the students who and the families that have had to suffer due to this, the economic effects and the social emotional effects of the pandemic. So I hope this is the start of, or Dr. Mans and I could talk on a continual, but hopefully this will be the start of not just Poverty Month addressing this, but an ongoing relationship and awareness with the county, working alongside of HCPS to try to address and get ahead of what we know is still yet to be determined and to come when we're talking about poverty in the county as a result of this pandemic. So I talked a lot. I just looked at the clock. I'm like, good grief, I talked for like 12 minutes. I'm sorry. I'll pause and let you guys ask any questions, or maybe it is a good time for Jocelyn to pop in. Monica, I'll let you facilitate.
I'm going to give everyone a chance to ask some questions. I have like one or two that I probably know the answer to, but I think it would be helpful if they heard it from you.
Sure.
And so let me give everyone an opportunity. I think Ms. Harrington, would you like to ask the question?
Yes, I was just curious. I was so excited when you said something about working with refugee populations and so on. Are you working with the Office of Refugee Resettlement?
I am not personally, but that doesn't mean Raina Van is not. We've been working with Reestablish Richmond, Kate Ayers and that group, obviously the various churches, the South Sudanese group I have had communication with ongoing, and helping to support them as they're looking for land and space to build their center, connected them with our EDA office, our Economic Development Authority, as well as the and I'm going to get it wrong, Islami community as well. So Raina and I try not to duplicate efforts, as there's a lot to go around, but I would be more than happy to connect you with Ms. Van, and you can talk more about the refugee organization that you mentioned. I am not. And
That's
Sacred
okay.
Heart
I'm familiar with it. I was just wondering that the only other question I had was a pretty profound statement about possible, an increase, because where I work is naturally a Title I school, et cetera. But that was a profound statement that this pandemic could very well increase poverty. And that was an eye opener for me, especially with the high school people, because I always think the young people, they're so acclimated, but I have forgotten after Colorado, what's happening with their mental health. The question I have is, what are we going to address the situation? Do we need to get a corps of teachers, volunteers, or I don't know. That's what bothers me, because those young people can be extremely productive, or either we'll let them go and they'll slip under the radar.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm going on mute now. Thank you.
No, and that is exactly why. These are the types of things, when people ask me what keeps me up at night, these are the types of things that I'm thinking about, is how do we, and that's why I put it out there to say that, this very realistically, that with our high school students, I think about our babies as well. I will tell you guys, sidebar, this morning while getting dressed on today's show, the superintendent from a Las Vegas, I can't remember what area of Las Vegas, but a Las Vegas public school superintendent said they had 19 suicides since March, just in his school division. And the youngest one was a third grader. It took my breath away. I literally had to hold on to my dresser, and the tears just welled, because to just think that a baby at third grade felt that they had no other way out, and I'm going to cry again, I'm sorry, no other way out. It just, it threw me for a loop. And so, yeah, these are the things that we have to have in our forefront as we think about the continued effects of what this longevity of being out of school and on virtual and not really knowing what our children are experiencing in their homes. And maybe Jocelyn can touch on some of this from the foster care standpoint and some of what DSS has been called in to deal with. But I just feel like as a partnership, as one county, and that's what we are, we're one county. When people write in and I respond on behalf of a board of supervisor, they don't know the difference between the school board and the board of supervisors. They don't care. When they are having a problem and they feel hopeless and helpless, they say Henrico. And so that's the way I want us to approach this as we think about how do we prepare for what potentially is to come and a potential for adding to our poverty numbers when we think about how many students have our high school students won't be contributing. They won't be a 3E. They won't be enrolled, enlisted, or employed at the end of this school year. What does that mean for our economy, and what does that mean for their future and the future of their families? So this is a team effort. So I am open and willing to be a part of any kind of subgroup or think tank to try to figure that out.
Monica, we can't hear you.
Did I go away?
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, that's Monica.
This is constantly our life. Ms. Harrington, just so you'll know, we have an immigrant and refugee group that was meeting once a week for the last couple of months, and now we're meeting once a month. I'd love to invite you to that if you're interested, particularly. And we work with a variety of organizations, and we just help coordinate efforts and make sure that they're aware of resources, of each other's resources, and then try to bring in information and resources to them. So I can get you on that list if you're interested. If you want to put your name in the chat, I can ask Leslie to send you as a guest. Second to the other question is, Monica, I think that something that was brought up. We've been talking a lot in schools, to my understanding. I say this because this doesn't fall in my office, but I have asked some questions because of very much the concerns that you've put out, Ms. Harrington. What are we doing? Like, what's the plan? Like, because when you talk about what keeps me up at night, it's very much that same issue. And we do have some members of the team, some members who are on the student support team, and I think that it would really behoove us to potentially have a follow-up meeting where we bring in people to let teachers know what the plan is, right? Because I think that there is this concern, and then also invite community members in. I'm thinking about our community-based mental health. I've done a lot of work with them over the last couple months, and I think having them at the table so they can know what we're doing, right, and we can know what they're doing. So I really do appreciate that question, Ms. Harrington, but and I am excited about that conversation, because I think this goes to this idea of what these learning lunches is supposed to be, is us learning from you and you learning from us, and growing. And so thank you. I wanted to say that. And so everybody on here, we will have a follow-up meeting where I will be asking for representatives from our student supports to come on, as well as representatives from our community-based mental health, so we can have an exchange of information and ideas around that, because what we can't have is children losing their lives on our watch. Like, that's a non-negotiable to me. So we cannot have that, and anything we can do to ensure that that does not happen. I had a student commit suicide on my watch, and that is personal, right, to me. And I that is the biggest regret. This hunter was there. It is the biggest regret of my career that I didn't know. I didn't, and so I say it to all of you all. We cannot allow that to happen. That cannot be us on the Good Morning America having that conversation. So thank you for that. Monica. So I do have a question that I do think it'll be important just for them to know. You actually oversee two very important departments for schools. One of them is libraries, library services, and I do you or do you not oversee what do they call it? The one who do the activities, the summer activities? Rec and Parks, yes. Do you, that falls under you?
That Rec and Park falls under where our public works and public utilities, but okay. we all work very closely together, but yes. So I always say I sort of commandeer the recreation side. Obviously parks is engineering, so that's not in my wheelhouse, but the recreation piece, definitely.
I just find that everybody, that's a good, knowing her is a good person to know because that's very important to us. So I have some other people who have some questions. Dr. Bodas, would you like to say something?
Yes, thank you, Dr. Mans. And thank you, Monica, for, introducing or giving us a good overview of the work, the very important work you do. I'm really heartened to see that connection between poverty and mental health being made explicitly. I am the mental health specialist for Henrico County Public Schools, and I have sort of struggled with, and Dr. Mans and I have talked about sort of how, issues of culture and trauma and, poverty, the other social determinants, as you said, about how they impact mental health and access to care. But also the link between, what in mental health we call the downward drift. Like when you have the mental health issues, then you start to that impacts your ability to, live meaningfully, be employed. And, so you see that downward drift in socioeconomic status within the family, that the next generation is increasingly poorer than the previous generation. And so, I feel like, yes, that is pertinent. Also the third wave kind of this pandemic, but I feel like the wave is already here of mental health issues that we will be facing. We're sort of in some ways scratching our heads and figuring out how are we in the world going to increase or access to mental health resources. And I feel like it is just a question that goes beyond us. And really needs some collaborative conversations within the community because children are sort of really desperate for help. And we hope we don't have to see, more suicides. We do have monthly meetings with Henrico Mental Health. So we have that collaborative dialogue going on, and I'm looking forward to kind of just follow up to this meeting to see if we can sort of come up with some sort of a action plan for services or supports for these students. I'm happy to sort of make this a part of our monthly meetings or whatever format that I will leave it up to Dr. Mans to facilitate that, but certainly my full support and investment in that initiative. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and we just hired a new manager over prevention in our mental health. Jacqueline Smith-White is the new Dr. Hill. And she has an equity focus and now addition to her role. So I think that this would be, a perfect opportunity to engage or enhance what you're already doing with Mental Health Monthly, but to bring in a different additional side of that for the folks who are currently on the ground and already working with HCPS to support county students.
All right. So I am going to say, thank you for being here with us.
Of course.
And I know you have a meeting. So
we have board meeting tonight. Yeah, you guys are Thursday. We're Tuesdays.
I really appreciate you making the time to meet with us. But I think that everybody here can say it was wonderful hearing from you, knowing about your position, knowing some of the work you're doing. Lastly to that, you are working really, you're putting a lot of effort around trying to enhance our food distribution program that we started over COVID. Can you quickly just speak to that before we move on to Jocelyn Dale? I just think that for many of the individuals on here, that was a program that was really helpful to their families. And I think that they would love to hear kind of what's the vision or what's our kind of next steps that's coming out of your office.
Yeah, no, and honestly, I wanted to go there, Monica, but when I looked down and saw how much time I had already taken up, I forgot that was a place I wanted to go. So thank you. Just really quickly, so everyone knows, the county is from my office really committed to how do we get sustainable food options into specifically thinking to start in the East End, where we know that there is a food desert. Feed More lost one of their larger food pantries on that end of the county. And as you know, a lot of our churches volunteers were seniors who were most vulnerable to the virus. So working with Dr. Manns and Marcy and that team was introduced to the ICNA group, Muslim group, who is supporting and putting and doing food distribution in the community. They are now a certified Central Virginia Food Bank Feed More partner and distributor. So we are looking at housing the county, providing space to them in the East End to be able to have a distribution hub. I think of them as hub and spoke model. So a spoke out in the East End where they can distribute food and have closer access to some of where the needs are coming from that group. In addition to that, also having conversations with the Food Justice Alliance that has been doing work for years in the city limits along that corridor, some of which on 9 Mile Road, but just not as far down as 9 Mile Road as Holland Springs. But from this whole grow your own standpoint, and what does that look like from an education collaboration, a CTE, in growing your own. So there is a lot of talk as to what will come of the current Holland Springs High School when the new one opens. So we are exploring what that could be. Obviously, that is a school board decision, but if there is space and opportunity there, I will be working really closely with whomever to try to keep in the forefront that it would be an ideal space for some of the concepts that we're talking about with food distribution, as of obviously having a food distributor, Central Virginia Food Bank, but beyond that, going beyond that for sustainable food sourcing and grow your own, and how do we engage our students in that concept, and have had talks with Mr. Baden, CTE, as well as Dr. Manns and Adrian and folks with the Henrico Education Foundation. So there is some traction there, but I will come on anytime, Monica, and update you guys as I learn more and more things are developed. But to start, I think we will be making an announcement, or Dr. Manns and her team will be making an announcement of a partnership with INCA here sooner rather than later for a distribution hub. A spoke, out in the East End.
We're very, very excited. And again, I'm going to let you go. So we're done. Thank you again so much for being with us. And I truly appreciate you making the time.
All right. Okay. Well, talk to you soon. Thanks so much, guys. Good luck with everything. Take care.
All right. Okay. So now I am really excited to, oh, sorry, Miss Perry, I didn't see your hand up. I'm so sorry. Your sound is off.
Sorry about that. So it's okay. Actually, you can just share it with Ms. Smith Callahan. It's more so a question of, since I am on the East End at the ACE Center, just wondering if our student organizations could somehow or another, like we have our National Tech Honor Society students and our Tech Ethics Society students, who could maybe do some volunteering with a food drive or something of that nature to kind of assist, because I know they're always, number one, looking for community service hours, and then they're looking for opportunities to be able to give back. So I don't know if there's some way or something that we can do. As a matter of fact, we have our meeting tomorrow and they're looking for volunteer opportunities. So I don't know if, instead of us going so far away, giving it to someone else, maybe we could give to our own backyard. I don't know, but.
You've been reading our mind. We actually have the design that we've proposed is one where we were going to our hope was to partner with the CTE program in the back, and try to make it so that they're actually involved in everything from the ordering of the food to not just the labor part of it, that they actually get some skills that they can put on their resume, to grow that. So we're really interested in that. And Mac and I have been playing with some ideas. I'm not as involved in it as I was before, but I am involved so much far that I can get that out there, right? Because that was in the original plan. And so I'm excited to hear you say that, because we didn't know. So now I know I can reach out to you. Obviously, we were going to reach out to the principal and talk a little bit more about it, but it's wonderful to bring you in on that conversation, Ms. Perry. So thank you for sharing that interest with us.
Sure, thank you.
All right. So now I am going to be introducing Jocelyn Dale. I will admit I have not met Ms. Dale, so but I've heard wonderful things about her, and so I'm going to just pass it on over to her. Is she here? Ms. Dale?
Thank you so much, Dr. Mans. I was having, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
It's a little scratchy, but we can hear you.
I've been having some audio issues, so I hope that I can go. Okay. Okay. So I am gonna, hopefully I'll get through my presentation with my audio working properly. So I'm gonna try to pull up my PowerPoint here. Okay, so again, I'm Jocelyn Dale. I'm the Benefits Division Manager for Henrico Social Services. And I just thought today I would give kind of a high-level overview of the programs that we offer, and some information about that that you can certainly pass on to your families or students' families or anyone who is interested and potentially eligible for some of our programs. So first, just about benefit programs in general, all of them have a financial criteria component and a non-financial. When I say non-financial, I mean residency, alien status, living arrangement, and then we have the financial criteria of income and resources. All of the benefit programs are reviewed periodically. Well, not the programs, but the cases are reviewed for eligibility periodically. And in general, the element have to be verified. All of our programs are processed through Virginia case management system. So that's just the system that we use to determine eligibility and administer the benefits. And we do have translation services available to non-English speakers through the translation line. I'm going over the programs in order of the caseload size in Henrico. So the first one is Medicaid. So Medicaid is an assistance program that pays for medical services to eligible needy individuals. And eligible individuals in Virginia must meet a covered group. So some of those covered groups are child under 19, pregnant woman, aged over 65. And each one of those covered groups has a different income and different resource limit. Generally, it's a 45-day processing time for Medicaid applications. Some situations may have a shorter processing time. For example, pregnant women have to be processed within 10 days. And then there's some situations where we may extend the processing time if we need additional information. No interview is required for the Medicaid program, and households or individuals are certified for a 1-year period. And so, as you can see, the Henrico active Medicaid recipients, 69,967. So the next program is the SNAP program, which stands for Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. And the purpose of this program is to reduce hunger and increase food security. Individual or households must meet the income and resource eligibility requirements. An interview is usually required for this program. We do those over the phone, but currently that interview is being waived due to COVID. The monthly allotment for this program, it depends on the household size, the income, the expenses. So what each person receives is totally dependent on their situation. Right now, because of COVID, the state is doing supplements every month, which bring the households up to the maximum allotment for their household size. And that's done in the families get their initial allotment, and then later in the month they get their supplement, which brings them up to the maximum amount. But again, that's just going on right now during COVID. The processing timeframes for SNAP applications, if you meet the criteria for expedited processing, your application could be processed within 7 days. The normal processing time is a 30-day period. And once an application is approved, it's certified for 6 months up to 2 years, depending on the circumstances of the household. And usually halfway through that certification period, there's an interim report where we just kind of check in with the household to see if there's any changes that we need to address or if everything is still the same. And so as of December, the Henrico SNAP household caseload size is 15,282 households. So the next program is TANF, and this stands for Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. This is a financial assistance program, and the purpose of this program is to provide assistance to needy families so that children may be cared for in their own homes or in the homes of relatives. An interview is required for this program, which has not been waived due to COVID. So TANF applicants still have to have an interview, but that's done also over the phone. The recipients must meet the non-financial requirements and the income requirements, but there is a resource test for the TANF program. It's a 30-day processing time, and there is a work component connected to the TANF program that unless you're exempt from it, the parent would have to participate a certain number of hours in the work program to talk about their skills, job readiness, job searching, and things like that. The certification period for TANF is 1 year with a 6-month interim report. And the Henrico TANF caseload right now is 661 households. That number has been going down during COVID, which is an interesting result that I didn't expect. Did someone have a question? I thought I heard.
Yes, I had a question. Can you clarify what is how do you qualify for this program, and what does it do?
For the TANF program?
Yes.
Okay. So it's a financial assistance program for people that have children in the home and little to no income. Usually if someone is working at all, that puts their income over the limit. So it's generally, you basically have to have zero income to qualify. One of the other requirements of this program is you have to cooperate with child support enforcement to, if one of the parents is not in the home, then they have to participate with Department of Child Support Enforcement to locate the absent parent and try to get that parent to pay back the money and pay child support. So that's.
You mentioned something about placing, did you say something about placing children with other relatives?
Oh, no, this is a program for people that have, the purpose of the program is so that.
Did you write down that you wrote? You did. Okay.
Hey, can you all mute your phone, please? Everybody, can you all mute your phone?
Sorry. Okay. So this program is it's basically it's for people who they are either caring for their own children or a relative.
Okay.
There are other programs available for if you're caring for a child that you're not related to, which I'll get to a little bit later. And then there's, you know, there's program for foster care. So this is generally just for people that are caring for a child that's related to them.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Yeah. And when I mentioned the thing about the income for this particular program, how you have to basically have no income, that also varies depending on if you're the actual parent or the child, or if you're a relative, then your income may not count. So it all depends on the situation. Okay, so I'll go to the next one. So energy assistance. So this is a seasonal program that has 3 components. So there's the fuel program in the fall, crisis in the fall and winter, and then cooling in the summer. So for fuel, it's a 30-day period between October and November where applications are taken. The crisis program goes November through March 15th, and the cooling assistance program is a 60-day period in June through August. And with these programs, it's mostly income-based, and the benefit amount varies each season, and it's determined at the start of the season. And this is a one-time payment. Usually these go to Dominion. There are some circumstances where we can cover repairs or replacement of the equipment in your household, but the majority of the approvals are for a payment of the electric bill. So in the fall, our total fuel approvals in Henrico was 2,892. So the last 2 programs are General Relief and Refugee Cash, and these are a cash assistance program. So the General Relief is the financial assistance program for children not residing with relatives, so that it has the basic same requirements as the TANF program, but except for having to be related to the child. It's a state and locally funded program, and Henrico's current general caseload is 34. And then the next program is the Refugee Cash Assistance, which is the financial assistance for refugees or special immigrants when they first enter the country for their first 8 months. There's the income requirements, and right now our current refugee cash caseload is 5. So
I have a question about that.
yes.
So, and maybe I should hold my questions, but I want to, since you're here, why is that number so low? We are getting, is it that it's just, there's just not new refugees coming in? Because I know a number, I mean, this is a program that I've been working with, the need is pretty significant.
Yeah, I've been with Henrico for about 3 years, and I know that our refugee cash caseload has always been relatively low, but again, it's only for the first 8 months that they're here in the country. So usually it's a situation where they arrive, they get the benefits, and then after 8 months, they may be receiving a different program, or they become self-sufficient. So I don't know if that's just because of the number that are just new to the country, or if there's any other factors with that.
Okay. Kiana has a question as well.
Oh, yes.
Yes, hi. So I actually worked with the Refugee Resettlement Organization, the IRC. I can add a little bit more onto that. A lot of our refugee families are going to go into TANF. Our CA typically only works for like a single client. So a lot of our families will be in TANF, or there's another program called Matching Grant which does very similar things.
Yes.
Very similar. Yeah.
Yes, that's exactly right. Yeah, we would definitely evaluate families for the TANF program first because that's a 1-year cert period. There's more benefits associated with that. So this next slide is just giving information on how to apply. You can apply online with the website listed here, by phone, or a paper application. We can mail it to customers or they can drop it off. I have an information flyer that I can send to you guys. Let's see. Try to pull it up.
Jocelyn, if you send it to us, we will email it to everybody who's on the list that attended today.
Okay. It's basically just information on how to apply and how to, we have various options for dropping off documents, emailing them to our agency, so the contactless options of how to obtain benefits.
A question for you, is it okay if we shared this, if you sent us the PowerPoint and then we then shared that PowerPoint with all the members here? I think that many of them would like it just as a reference document for their work. So is that okay with you?
Sure, my audio is weird, but I think you said, is it okay to share it? And that's fine.
Yeah, if you would send me the PowerPoint, and then I can then ask Ms. Brown to send it off to all the people, all those who participated.
Sure.
So now we'd like to open it up for questions. Is there any questions for Ms. Dale in reference to the information she shared, or also any questions, just information around the work that she does in benefit? Well, okay. Well, you just did an excellent job, Ms. Dale.
I'll ask a question.
I don't know. I just kind of went through all the information. I do want to ask one thing. Is there any programming or thoughts around? I'm thinking about what I call my new poor. When we had the last downward spiral of our economy, there was a number of families who were just not used to accessing assistance. And I think it put a lot of families in a very difficult place because they did not understand how to access assistance, but they desperately were in need of the assistance, which caused a lot of anxiety in the households, which then manifested in their children having behaviors who did not historically have behaviors in the classroom. I really saw a lot of intermittent trauma during that time. Now I think about COVID times 10, right? Is there any conversations going on in your arena, Ms. Dale, around this kind of, and again, I call them the new poor, like the new poor. They were probably, working class and sometimes even above working class, but now parents don't have the means. Some of them live in houses, but the moratorium potentially is going to be over soon for their rent. So I just wondering, is that a conversation that your team is having around how to support that group?
So I wouldn't say that we've been having conversations specifically after COVID, but we do have outreach efforts in place. So we have a worker stationed at St. Mary's. We have another worker stationed at Henrico Doctors, also with Henrico Mental Health and the Cedar Fork Workforce Center. And then, like Monica said earlier, we're also going to be in the mix for the new space at St. Luke's. So we are, doing outreach efforts and looking to expand those to increase participation.
All right, thank you.
I have one question, if you don't mind.
Yes.
I am the counselor. My name's Tara. I'm the counselor at Crestview Elementary, and we don't have a lot of refugee families, but I know that Ridge, that is near us does have a lot of them. How is assistance arranged for those families exactly? I mean, is there a responsibility by the school to hook them up with Henrico Social Services, or are they come into the country and their services are kind of immediately dispersed to, what they need through Henrico Social Services? Does that make sense?
Yeah, sure. I think that in general, they come through a resettlement agency that refers them to the specific programs that they should be asking for, and social services specifically, so that they already kind of have in mind what it is that they need to be applying for and what they could potentially qualify for.
Okay.
But like I said, I'll be sending the flyer to you guys. So if you come across any families, even if they were refugees that entered the country a while ago, but they still needed assistance, we can always, because even if your application was denied last month, it could be approved this month. It all depends on your situation at the time that you apply.
Okay. Okay, so they're aware when they come in, and Refugee Resettlement Services will say, okay, these are your options. This is how we can help support you through Henrico County, and so they're given this information when they come in.
Yes, that's my understanding. Yes.
Okay. Good.
Jocelyn, what about if they come in? I hate to say illegal. That always makes me uncomfortable. They come in undocumented. So can they still access those services, or do they have to come through some type of resettlement program?
So anyone can apply for any program. In general, undocumented are not eligible themselves for benefits, but if they have U.S. born children, then those children could be potentially eligible for the benefits.
Okay. Thank you.
And there is also, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but what it's called, but basically all the programs except for TANF should not, I'm trying to think of the word, but it doesn't count against them if they're trying to apply for citizenship or legal status. I think it's called a burden on the state or something like that. But I know a lot of times undocumented immigrants are worried about their applying for benefits now and how it might affect their future. And most of the programs, like I said, with the exception of TANF, would not have any effect on that when they try to apply for residency or citizenship in the future.
So I want to be clear about that one because that's new. So are you saying that undocumented families can apply for SNAP benefits? Because that's a misnomer in the community.
Yes, anyone can apply for anything. Doesn't mean they'll be approved, but they can apply for sure. Yes.
So they can apply, but you're saying that it's not. What's the likelihood of their approval?
So it just depends on the family. So before I came to Henrico, I worked in Fairfax for like 14 years. So we had a lot of undocumented families, and usually it was they had US born children, and those were the individuals that qualified in their household. Of course, the parent has to be the one to actually file the application. But the children are the ones that end up being eligible for assistance. But there is one specific small program that undocumented aliens could potentially qualify for, and that's within the Medicaid program. If they have an emergency hospitalization, they could qualify to have that hospitalization covered for themselves if they meet all the other criteria.
Is that an app for those who are dealing with COVID health matters?
Yeah, it's so usually how that works is, so it happens with undocumented pregnant women when they have their baby in the hospital. And then any other hospitalization that an undocumented person might have, they file the application. We request the medical records from that hospitalization, and then it's sent to the Department of Medical Assistance Services, the state, and they determine if it's considered an emergency or not. And if it's considered emergency, then we approve them for Medicaid for the specific days that they were in the hospital.
So you can back. Okay. Ms. Harrington has a question for you if you have a moment longer.
Sure.
I have one question. The question is, I know you mentioned the different categories, but I don't think I heard you say unaccompanied minors. And I have an ESL background and all that, but so I'm just wondering if they came here unaccompanied and they're 15, 16, who kind of, I mean, a lot of them will be invisible, or they'll come to school, they'll get educated, but will they qualify for services? Sometimes it's another relative that puts them in their household and stuff like that.
So for all of our programs, if the person is under 18, it would be the responsible adult that applies for them. And I don't know too much about unaccompanied minor, what that means, but exactly.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks.
Tara, you had another question.
Yes, I do. I'm sorry.
I like them.
I'm also just wondering, like, if a family does not have papers, they're in fear of getting deported. Is there any impact in contacting social services to try to receive benefits? Like, even if they do have kids that were born in the United States, I know a lot of families that would not ever take that chance because the parents are illegal citizens, right? So, so is there any risk in them taking these steps?
No, we are not in the business of reporting people to immigration. The only time that we may get involved in any of that is if someone is a sponsored immigrant, and then we ask information about the sponsor. For one of our programs, I think it's SNAP. I get the policies confused, but for one of our programs, we have to report that basically the sponsor isn't living up to their obligations that they agreed to. But if you're just straight undocumented, no, we're not going to be reporting anyone to immigration.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Grace, Kiana Grace.
This might be very specific, but how can families access that language line? For instance, if they want to call a caseworker and have specific questions about SNAP or TANF, how can they call using that language line?
So that is something that we do on our end, but if the client calls and said, I need Spanish interpreter, I need Arabic interpreter, we can do a conference call and get an interpreter on the line to assist.
But they would have to, just so we can clearly state that, they would have to access you using the phone number and make the request to the best of their language ability for what language they need. And then you all have people on your end that are used to, I just want to make sure, because this happened before, that are used to receiving people who do not speak English and will be able to navigate that with them. Is that what I'm understanding, Ms. Dale?
Yes, that's how it should be happening. So usually the caseworker, they may say, okay, do you speak English? Do you prefer an interpreter? What language do you need? And then we go from there. I think in general, people try to communicate in English first, but if they're having a difficulty or if the customer requests it, then they would conference in the language line at that point.
Oh, in real time, or there is a wait, like they'll say, hey, call me back at 3 because there has to be and the reason I'm asking and being this detail is that we've had a number I've had a number of families who said that they've had some difficulty navigating. And I just want to make sure that I am saying to them accurately what the process should look like.
Yes, we can get the interpreter immediately. It's a language line that the county contracts with, and so we can get the interpreter. I mean, as long as it's not like an obscure language that we have to wait for that particular interpreter. But if it's Spanish, Arabic, French, usually it's right away.
Okay, great. Thank you. Kiana, did she answer your question, or is there a follow-up to that one?
No, there actually is a follow-up, but that did answer my question. Thank you. As a follow-up, so I know I've talked to some families that we've worked with, and we say for them to call the main line just to make sure that they actually get someone to speak to, just in case their caseworker is not answering. Are they able to, my question is, are they able to speak to that that operator person, ask for an interpreter, and then be transferred to their caseworker to leave a message with that interpreter on the phone, so they can leave a message with the interpreter? I don't know if that makes sense.
That does make a lot of sense. It's actually something we haven't talked about or explored. I don't know if that would work with the way that the phone lines work and the transferring with the interpreter, but it's certainly something that we can look into, because that is a good idea. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Dale, thank you for coming out with all. I know you said you had some difficulties, but this information was very, very helpful. Hold up, I do have another person that has a question. Marcy, good?
Hi, I just actually was asked today, how do families reach out to interpreters for their school? So what is the number that they would call?
Marcy, that would be different for the schools.
It's different for the schools?
Yeah, I'll get that for you, but that would be a different one for the schools. I'll walk you through the process. I'll call you offline and walk you through the process, but it's a different funding source, so we pay up out of a different source for that. So we have a language line, but you have to go through another process.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. All right. Is there any other questions?
Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you, Ms. Dale. I know you had some technical issues, but we really do appreciate you taking the time to share this information with us.
Sure, and I'll send the PowerPoint to Leslie Brown. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, I'll send her the PowerPoint and also the information flyer.
All right, wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So everyone, I almost got you out of here in a power hour. I was trying my best. But again, thank you all for taking this time this evening to be with us. And we're going to try to have our plan is to have another lunch and learn. And so you'll get an email. Anybody who ever attends one, we always send an email. I think the next one is probably going to be around mental health. And so I'll be working with Dr. Bodaz about getting people in. It will not just be the school. We are going to be reaching out to community members as well. And bringing them in, and let's really kind of have a conversation about what is the plan, because again, I think some real issues were brought up here that have been heavy on my heart and minds, and I'm very interested in how I can support out of my office just the connections to ensure that as much as possible, we're providing the best wraparound care and services for our students.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Appreciate it.
All right.
Thank
Goodbye.
Bye.
Thank you.